You just built an incredibly fast serverless backend using AWS Lambda. But there is a problem. Lambda does not have a public web address by default. If your users are on a mobile app, how do they actually trigger your code securely over the internet? You need a front door. Enter Amazon API Gateway. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed AWS service that lets developers create, publish, monitor, and secure APIs at scale. But instead of memorizing the definition, think about what problem it solves. Imagine your company office building. Deep in the back room, your developers are working on sensitive systems. You would never let random strangers walk directly through the building looking for engineers. Everyone has to stop at the front desk first. That front desk is API Gateway. API Gateway sits at the edge of your AWS environment and becomes the public entry point for your application. Users send normal HTTP requests to the gateway. The gateway receives the request, understands where it should go, and safely forwards it to the correct backend service. That backend might be a Lambda function, an EC2 server, or another AWS service. This matters because Lambda itself is not sitting on the internet waiting for incoming web traffic. Lambda runs code when AWS tells it to run. API Gateway is what connects public internet traffic to that serverless code. Now, the important question: why use API Gateway instead of exposing systems directly? Because it handles security and traffic management automatically. One huge feature is throttling. Imagine a malicious bot trying to hammer your API with 1 million requests every second. Without protection, your backend could crash or your AWS bill could explode. API Gateway acts like a security guard at the front door. It limits excessive traffic and drops requests that break your rules before they ever reach Lambda. Another major feature is caching. Suppose thousands of users request the exact same information, like product prices or sports scores. Instead of waking up your backend every single time, API Gateway can remember the previous response and immediately return it to new users. Faster responses for customers, less work for your backend systems, and lower costs. Here is a useful exam shortcut if you are studying for AWS certifications. Whenever you see phrases like serverless REST API or serverless backend, think of the classic pair, API Gateway plus Lambda. API Gateway receives requests, Lambda executes the business logic. Now let's walk through a real architecture flow. A user opens your mobile app and taps the checkout button. The app sends a REST API request over the internet to Amazon API Gateway. Before anything touches your backend, the gateway checks the user's identity. This might happen through IAM permissions or Amazon Cognito authentication. In simple terms, the gateway checks the user's digital ID badge. If the request is valid, Amazon API Gateway triggers the correct Lambda function. Lambda wakes up instantly and runs your backend code. Maybe it processes a payment, validates an order, calculates tax, or creates a receipt. Then, the function stores data inside DynamoDB table. Once the work is finished, Lambda sends a response back through API Gateway, and the user sees a success message on their phone. The entire process usually happens in milliseconds. No server maintenance, no operating systems to patch, no scaling infrastructure to manage manually. That is the core idea behind modern serverless architecture on AWS. API Gateway is the secure public front door. Lambda is the serverless compute engine behind it. You now understand how mobile apps securely communicate with serverless backend code in AWS. But not every company runs pure serverless systems. Many businesses still rely on applications packaged inside Docker containers. In the next video, you'll learn how Amazon ECS runs those containers in the cloud and how containerization compares to serverless architecture.